So the research about metta meditation, compassion, loving kindness meditation, and the benefits of that are really indisputed. And so this practice that we're doing is really key. Now, there is often a tendency in the therapy field at large to begin to think in positive psychological terms as if we are to throw water on the fire of our aggression, or we need to resource when we have trauma. Part of what I was trying to bring, what I'm bringing in organic intelligence, is a real shift from other frames which use trauma and then the sensation of trauma. Then it's been realized, fortunately, that one needs to resource that. And so they're throwing resources on the trauma. So a person has a sensation of discomfort, and so the shoulders are really tight, for instance, and then they say, okay, now just imagine yourself in your safe place, and you go to your beach, and you relax, and you feel the warm sun and the sound of the waves, and so they are throwing a resource on the fire of the trauma that they ignited. So what we're doing here in organic intelligence is understanding from complexity science, chaos theory, the sensitivity of our system to initial conditions. The sensitivity of our system to initial conditions. So if the initial conditions is fire, then yeah, you have to do something about it. If the initial conditions is blossoming goodness, then the water is not to put out the fire, it's to feed the plant. So we are going to have a really different approach, and we've been looking at this all along, finding the blues. What is the organizing information from all of the isoma channels so that we don't end up trying to throw water on the fire of our trauma, on the fire of our dysregulating information. Because once that comes up, once the dysregulating information starts to be listened to, the what's wrong attention grabs onto it, hangs onto it, and keeps it in play until the system really collapses or goes into further disorganization, just keeps the system stuck, right? That's what we've been learning this whole time. So we are looking instead at building our access to positive affect, and we are going to bring successive challenge, not primarily by saying, oh, what's the trauma, what's the deepest, darkest trauma, right? We're going to be looking at what are the avenues of expression of pleasure, of joy? How can I begin to feel the emotions that are enlivening, and especially around the positive emotions of love, affection, compassion, those that are most fundamental really to our nature. And so we will also then bring that into relationship to a certain challenge. So we'll look at exercises in which we extend compassion in metta meditation. We usually begin with oneself. You notice as we started this week, we didn't begin with oneself. We began with the compassion, a state, evoking a state of loving kindness, and then seeing how easily that's extended out and using that outside process to understand, yeah, that's for me also. That love for somebody else, that's for me also. And we use the naturalness of the outside process to restore this deepening, integral feeling of compassion also for oneself, because it's only fair. And then we will also then bring that loving kindness from oneself into rippling waves out into the world, toward life, and hopefully then transcending these barriers of like, oh, I like it, I don't like it, into life. I like it, and I'm embracing it, bringing the embrace of life all together. And that will mean that we're going to be bumping up against our conditioning. One of the metaphors of work, of like Zen work, is that the monks in the monastery will bump into each other, their conditioning bumps into each other and smooths them, and smooths the rough spots as pebbles in the stream that bounce off one another in the water, right? we're going to be doing that here also. We're going to bump up against a little bit of my conditioning when we begin to think about others that I don't really like a whole lot, others that bug me, annoy me, just tick me off, get under my skin, or I just go, ugh, whatever, wherever you think of like the inner emoji of eye roll, that's where we're going to try to send some good loving, okay? So loving kindness is going to be extended in that way, but we begin not from how much they bug me and what a schmuck they are, but we begin with this extension of compassion toward oneself and others and the states of compassion that arise. And so we'll use our images of, those we love. We'll use a sensation of like warmth, of like expansion and spaciousness, warmth in the chest. We'll look at orientation and just the wonder of nature about me, meaning and destiny, like why I'm on this planet, this sense of purpose that I might be able to have. And then from these more positive emotional states, this extension of compassion to include then those also who have, through their own suffering, either consciously or unconsciously, caused suffering for others, including oneself. And so we will extend compassion even to those that we think are unkind, rude, harmful, dangerous, whatever. And the reason for that is because that's good for me. It's good for you. It is good for us to be freed from these spikes of intensity of fight or flight or freeze that are self-protective, that are survival-based programs that get stimulated when I feel under attack in some way. And when somebody is rude or crude or boorish or unkind or just ignoring or any of all of that, any of those things that stimulate my states of threat, then that's going to jack up my fight, flight, and freeze. Instead, we are going to try to seat ourselves in this seat of compassion, and then begin to extend this out. We'll get the priming to happen first, evoking positive states, extending this compassion out to where it's easy, and then bring a little challenge by also extending it to those for whom it's not as easy. But it is my job. It is my responsibility to take care of the states within myself that are damaging to myself. Take care of myself, the states that are damaging to myself. So we begin in this seat of compassion, extending that out, including in that all beings, and then specifically those that I find really challenging, those that are stimulating my automatic responses that really in the end aren't good for me, those states of discomfort, dislike, fight, flight, and freeze, and so on. Okay, so that's our challenge. That's why we have this in this final week, affect. It takes a while, but we've got the practice, and you've got these SUP, the strategic use of perception exercises, including plenty of bonus SUPs this week for your use. So make use of those, and from now on, that's going to be part of our agenda.